So I recently did a test on Content ID because I was so sick and tired of getting copyright strikes from Toei every time I want to do a Kamen Rider reaction. So I did 7 tests to see what it would take to get past the Content ID filter. And I found something interesting. So only my first 2 tests were actually successful. So the first one was a control. I uploaded a scene from one of the Batman movies. The one with Liam Neeson. I don't remember the name of it. I think it was one of the Dark Knight movies. Not important. It's an extremely popular movie, definitely within the Content ID library for sure. And of course, it's 3 uninterrupted minutes of movie. So unsurprisingly, when I upload 3 unedited, uninterrupted minutes of video from a popular movie, immediately copyright claim. Okay, no big deal. But then I did some Content ID tests. The very first thing I tried was a filter, and I was actually surprised I got this right on the first try. So all I did was I put a filter. So if you search no signal, I can't spell. This image right here, that color test that you get when like the broadcast goes down and they're just testing to see if it works and they got all the different colors. So this image right here, I cropped it and put it at 50% opacity. You can still make out what's going on as the video plays, but it's definitely not ideal. It's pretty gross. It's just barely enough for you to make out what's going on as like a demonstration, but definitely not something you'd want to use for like a reaction. Just because since it's got this like filter over it, it just looks so garbage. It's just barely enough for you to make out what's going on while the clip is in motion. So obviously that's not ideal. So I was like, okay, what if it's just super short? And then again, my very first test was successful. Just by making the clip 29 seconds long, it didn't trip Content ID. And I'm 100% confident that's not because Content ID wasn't able to identify it. It's just I was using such a small amount of footage that they just didn't care. You know what I'm saying? So then I was like, okay, this works on the first try, using 30 seconds or putting the no signal image at 50% opacity, was able to get it through. And I kept trying. I tried many times to tweak it just a little bit so I could get like a little bit more footage or a little bit more clarity, but no. Even after many attempts, even at like 35% opacity, it got copyright claimed. Even at 59 seconds, copyright claimed. So it does seem that there is a certain amount of total footage that they're just willing to not bother claiming because it's just such a small amount of footage they don't care, and that appears to be under 30 seconds because, 59 seconds claimed. So it's really either just use so little footage that they don't care, or make the video borderline unwatchable with a hideous filter. So it's not that Content ID can't be beat, it's just that it is impossible to get anything really usable out of it. Now there are definitely other ways of getting around Content ID, but they're less reliable. For example, I have a couple of Kamen Rider reactions up. Now these actually got taken down when I uploaded them last, but not because of Content ID. What I did on these videos prior to putting the filter up is I just had the segments, each individual segment, 6 seconds or less of actual footage. So every 6 seconds there'd be a cut, and then the next cut would not begin until it was at least 6 seconds later within the same video. And I was able to get that past Content ID. If you keep your segments 6 seconds or less, and the next segment isn't until at least 6 seconds later, it won't be picked up by Content ID. But even though I got it past Content ID, I don't have it here because I didn't start doing this test until after I had already gotten it taken down and deleted the video. But the day after I uploaded it, while it was still unlisted because it was a scheduled video, it got manually found out and taken down by Toei. So that means even if you get it past Content ID, it can still be manually found while it's unlisted. If you do something and it gets past Content ID, don't publish it. Schedule it. I would say at least 3 days, if not like a week in advance. I would do that and just keep an eye on it and make sure that you have plenty of time to make the necessary edits or put filters or what have you to get it around these copyright strikes. Because it is hard out here doing reaction content. So far, the only thing that I have found that consistently works without issue is if you're watching like a compilation and it's got multiple clips from multiple different episodes or multiple different shows, you can usually react to these fairly safely because a lot of the times this has already been edited around Content ID. And even if it hasn't, it's relatively easy to edit around your own reactions, because by making a compilation from multiple different episodes or multiple different shows, you can use less than 30 seconds of content from each individual episode, which would trigger Content ID, while still creating a video that is longer than 30 seconds. If you want to make a reaction style video, I would either look up compilations on YouTube. If you just want to have a talk about a series and have footage kind of playing in the background and you don't want to have an ugly filter, you just want to have an example, take 30 seconds or less of content from multiple different episodes. And so far as I can tell, that appears to get past the Content ID. It's very unlikely to get manually taken down because you're just using so little content from each individual episode. It's not that they can't figure it out what you're doing, they just don't care. And even then, you're still just banking on the idea that the copyright holder isn't going to care. And that's a very dangerous thing to do, because they probably don't care because I'm a very small channel, 1,250 subscribers. But when you get big, like Totally Not Mark, things that they may have not bothered to manually claim before, just because you weren't very big, might later on get claimed now that you're making a substantial amount of money off of it. Then they might care. So really, Content ID friggin' sucks. And there really isn't a lot of good solutions. And it would be really nice to be able to have more than 30 seconds of total content so I can do a friggin' reaction. I know I'm not the only one who's annoyed by this. At my wit's end, I'm trying to do a reaction and I can't show footage from the friggin' show to react to. Like, in order to get the Garo video up, I basically had no footage, just still images. I just freeze framed it, said my piece, and then moved on to the next frame of video. And that obviously got past Content ID. And honestly, those are your options, guys. Use less than 30 seconds, use still images, or put a hideous filter over it to make it just unpleasant to watch. And I have one final piece of useful information to add. As someone who has uploaded content that has later been copyright picked up by Content ID, you find out about it within 24 hours usually. And on top of finding out about it within 24 hours, it actually does show you specifically how much of their video used your content. Like, you know, was your content 10% of their video, 100% of their video, etc., etc. And it gives you a lot of metrics. So I'm willing to bet if you upload something and after a couple days it doesn't get manually claimed, it is, except in the extreme cases where you're making a ton of money off of it, like Totally Not Mark, where they just have a vendetta against you. When you upload their content, even if you're using one of these schemes to get around it, they still know. They're just letting it slide. But usually if they let it slide after a couple of days, they've probably looked at it and just decided not to bother with it, either because you use so little of their content or you're just so small they just don't care. Those really aren't long-term permanent solutions. But yeah, that's the last relevant piece of Content ID information I can give to you other content creators. I wish you all the best of luck, and I hope we can, at some point in the future, have some mercy from YouTube. Just, oh my god, why can't I just geo-block all my Kamen Rider content in Japan? None of my fans are even in Japan. Alright, bye guys.